Okay. Well, we're going to continue in the book of Malachi. We're now in chapter 3, verses 6 through 12. And it's kind of one of the main reasons this book, just to clarify some of the misconceptions I think is in here. I'm not going to be too controversial, but just to have a more clear understanding of what God means from these verses. But I guess a quick recap. Chapters 1 to this point basically showed God going through this whole process of condemning the people of Israel, basically telling them they're offering polluted things, they're not keeping up the word, they're not showing that he loves him, they're forgetting the promises they've made, they're forgetting their forefathers. He's also making a big push to condemn the Levitical priesthood, the ones who are supposed to keep the law, the ones who are supposed to be explaining to the people what the right things are supposed to be. And they're not doing that, which is also leading into the people failing. And basically just showing that the covenant failed, not because God himself failed, the covenant was wrong, but the people were not able to live up to it. Now, this failing of the covenant, this breaking of the covenant, this inability of man to keep it, actually is what gives us our salvation today. Is this because God then sends a messenger who we know to be John the Baptist, and then he sends a Messiah to judge the people, which is Christ. And through him, all of us now can claim a kinship to Jesus. All right. And I believe that the verses in chapter 3, verses 1 through 5, show that God has nullified the Levitical priesthood. That by nullifying it, it brought a better covenant. A better covenant by which we are saved by the grace of God, as opposed to a covenant where you can say, well, depending on how you keep the law, right? The law is kept perfectly through Christ. I'm going to read verses, chapter 3, I'm going to cover 6 to 12, which is a really big chunk, but I believe it's all fits together. It says, chapter 3, verse 6, "For I am the Lord, I change not. Therefore, ye sons of Jacob are not consumed. Even from the days of your fathers you have gone away from my ordinances, and have not kept them. Return unto me, and I will return unto you, saith the Lord of hosts. But ye said, wherein shall we return? Will a man rob God? Yet ye have robbed me. But you say, wherein have we robbed thee? In tithes and offerings you are cursed with a curse, for ye have robbed me, even this whole nation. Bring ye all the tithes into the storehouse, that there may be meat in mine house. And prove me now herewith, saith the Lord of hosts, if I will not open you the windows of heaven, and pour you out a blessing, that there shall not be room to receive it. And I will rebuke the devourer for your sakes, and he shall not destroy the fruits of your ground, nor shall your vine cast her fruit before the time in the field, saith the Lord of hosts. And I and all nations shall call you blessed, for ye shall be a delightsome land, saith the Lord of hosts." Now, in this is a lot of stuff I can go into about the Levitical law, the Deuteronomy, Numbers, and all the different aspects of how you bring tithes and everything. But I'm going to belabor some of that, just kind of focus on what I believe the thrust of this is. Basically, in verse 6 through 7, last time I ended with talking about, "For I am the Lord, I change not, and therefore you sons of Jacob are not consumed." And basically, can someone read Galatians 3:16, just to reiterate why? I think we all know, but I gave you the text. Well, I gave you the verse, not on the paper. We got to get in the book. Galatians 3:16.
Now the promises were made to Abraham and to his offspring. It does not say, and to offspring, referring to many, but referring to one, and to your offspring, who is Christ.
Correct. Thank you. So he's saying the fact that you've been failing to keep your end of the bargain in the law, the fact that you're corrupting everything, the fact that you're not giving the right things in your tithing and offerings, and you're not living your life the right way according to the laws that I've prescribed to you, that God is saying, well, I'm the Lord, I change not, right? He's saying, therefore, you sons of Jacob are not consumed. So by rights, they should be consumed. Deuteronomy 29:28 talks about the consequences of their actions. And some of that was manifested on them, but they weren't consumed. They weren't completely destroyed because God made a promise to Abraham to a seed, right? And so the verses before this talk about how how God is going to send a Messiah. Now, this Messiah is Christ. This seed is the Christ. And I just wanted to reiterate again at this Bible study that they were not consumed, not because God was somehow held bound to a promise he made to Abraham and his kids, and that God just won't do anything to the Jews because they're exempt from actually having to keep the law, but because he had made a promise to provide a seed, that there was a Messiah that would come, irrespective of how they behaved. And actually, their actions called for a Messiah because they cannot keep the law. It was a dual purpose, right? So he's saying, you are not consumed. I've cursed you. I've caused you to have hardships. I've had you get taken away several times. But at the very end of it, you are still a tribe. You're still around, even though you blaspheme my name, because I promised to a seed. Right? Any questions? Good. Now, it continues in verse 7, talking about, even from the days of your fathers are you gone away from mine ordinances, which means my commands, the things that I've told you to do, and you have not kept them. You have not kept them. So he says, return unto me, and I will return unto you. And the question they ask is, where shall we return? Yes, Ray, I'm sorry.
Talking about the seed of Abraham, covenant.
Covenant, the law of Moses. Mm-hmm. They never kept it fully. No. Mm-hmm. That was the question? Oh, thank you, Ray.
Just on what you were saying about seed, it's very important to solidify this in Galatians 3:29. And if you be Christ, then are you Abraham's seed?
Correct.
And heir according to the promise. So
amen. Thank you.
Basically stems all the way from Genesis 3:16 to that particular point there.
Amen. Thank you. And if you guys remember when we did Bible study on 1 Peter, it was this understanding that all these things that are happening are for our time. God's going through this whole process because he's going to save a people unto himself. We are, like Bob is saying, thank you. I told you you'd help me out today. That we are in that seed. It's to Christ, but for Christ, for us, right? And not just us, to particular people in this room, but for all the believers, for all time, right? It was a necessity that this happened.
And that's why Abraham is the father of all believers.
Amen.
Amen.
Thank you. So this is a question, like I was telling you when we first started this book. There's this kind of question-answer thing where God is asking rhetorical questions and giving the answer. The prophets repeat. The people are. He's not like the prophet is standing outside and telling the people this question, and they're responding back to him this way. God is saying, I know your hearts. This is how you're answering. By the way you're living, you're answering me this way. So when he says, you have not kept my ordinances, return unto me. He knows in their hearts they're saying, what do you mean, return unto you? We're keeping all the Sabbath days. You know, every Saturday when the sun goes down, we stop cooking. We're doing everything you've told us to do, right? We're keeping ourselves separate from the Gentiles in the way that they thought they were keeping themselves separate. But they didn't realize they were breaking all the laws. So the question I want to ask you is, God is saying very clearly in this that even from the days of your fathers. So some of them are saying, well, at least our fathers did it. If we're not keeping it perfectly, God's going to honor us because of our fathers. And he said, no, even from the days of your fathers, even from the patriarchs at which you guys are lending your strength and your blood on, didn't do it right. Right? So he's answering this question that's in their heart, saying, well, Abraham, Jacob, Isaac, all these, Judah, all these guys, they were faithful. No. They also failed, is what he's saying. Even from the days of your fathers, it was failed. Now I have Numbers chapter 14, 11 through 15 to kind of show you an example of how remember, this is right after they were taken out of Egypt from bondage, of hundreds of years of bondage. And God is feeding them, and he's sending down manna from heaven, and he's giving them drink, and God's protecting them and keeping them, and he's a light to them in the day, and they follow in the cloud in a light in the night and a cloud in the day that they're following. They're depending completely on God, and yet this is what the people do. Could someone read Numbers 14, 11 to 15?
The Lord said to Moses, how long will this people spurn me? And how long will they not believe in me, despite all the signs which I have performed in their midst? I will smite them with pestilence and dispossess them, and I will make you into a nation greater and mightier than they. But Moses said to the Lord, then the Egyptians will hear of it. For by your strength you brought up this people from their midst, and they will tell it to the inhabitants of this land. They have heard that you, O Lord, are in the midst of this people, for you, O Lord, are seen eye to eye, while your cloud stands over them, and you go before them in a pillar of cloud by day, and in a pillar of fire by night. Now if you slay this people as one man, then the nations who have heard of your fame will say, because the Lord could not bring this people into the land which he promised them by oath. Therefore he slaughtered them in the wilderness.
All right, so thank you, Dan. So there's 2 points I'm showing here. On the one hand, we're going again. God kept his promise to provide a seed, and he also was for his namesake, for his glory. Because he'd set them aside, and it would be a bad sign on him if he destroyed them all. Because then he chose them. It would be a bad sign on him. So that's a dual thing. So it's not only to the seed, but also for God's namesake. It wasn't for their purposes, is what I wanted to show you in that. Also, on top of that, he's talking about the pillar the pillar of cloud by day and the pillar of fire by night. And God is saying, why are these people constantly provoking me? When they're asking for water, when they're complaining about the quail and saying, why can't we have meat? When they're constantly telling Moses, why have you taken it out of Egypt? Were there not enough graves in Egypt? Why you had to take us out of Egypt? Right? And so they're complaining and they're mocking and they're complaining this whole process. We always say to ourselves, I wish God would just show me a sign. He showed them sign upon sign upon sign. And God, to the point where God, who's long-suffering, when we talked about his patience last time, he's saying, how long will these people provoke me? And so this is very early on in this time from when, after Abraham, very early on. He's saying, even your fathers didn't keep it. So they're not keeping it, and they can't even rest on the fact that maybe their forefathers kept it, right? So God is condemning them in all ways. So he's answering the question that's in their hearts. Because in their hearts, like I would say, well, yeah, I'm not really that great a Christian, but Grace Baptist is really. He's like, no. It's the church. You can't fall back on anything else. I can't fall back on Pastor Peter's adherence to God's word or Benito's adherence to God's word. But they were doing that. They were saying, well, at least our fathers used to do it. He's like, no, not even your fathers did it. Have proof. Yes, sir.
I also see with God wooing them back, being so gracious. When you go to Deuteronomy 8, it says that I am the Lord. Do not forget the Lord. Keep the commandments. In Hosea, that God is always doing that with them, wooing them back and calling them back to repentance, and they're so stiff-necked.
And then Pastor Peter's going to the book of Judges and this constant yo-yo back and forth. This is over. I don't want you to think it's over a couple of years. This is over hundreds of years where they're going back and forth, ultimately up in 1 Samuel, where they're like, well, give us a king. After God's been keeping them, protecting them, sending them judges. We just talked about Samson. So miraculous things are happening where a very few, I think 300, were able to take out a whole army. And they're saying, I want to have a king over me, a human king. So they're provoking him, and they're being very disrespectful to God. And God's saying this has continued from the very beginning up till now. I just laid a case about it. Yeah, question there?
Yeah. I also like that passage. Moses is kind of like interceding.
Correct.
It's like a picture of Christ.
Amen.
Interceding for us. Holding back God's wrath.
Mm-hmm. And that's what Christ's ultimate act is when he comes, is to hold back the wrath of God. At least for the elect, the people that he's chosen for himself. Yes, Ray.
When God commanded Moses to the people from Egypt, when the people called upon Moses and say, "You brought us out here. What we going to eat? There's nothing, nothing. Who's going to provide the food for us?"
Right.
Then Moses said, "God will provide."
Amen. Amen.
You understand?
Yes.
So even for them, they say, how long are we going to wait for God to provide?
Yeah, thank you, Ray. So Ray's saying that when they brought the Jewish people out of Israel, out of out of Egypt, it feels like that's something, right? Out of Egypt, they were complaining about food, and then God said He will give them the food. And then even when He said He's going to give them the food, they were also complaining about when the food was going to come. And if you continue on, you're going to find out they're going to complain about the type of food they're getting, right? And when without God, they would have starved. It's a backwards way of looking at it. So God is speaking to their heart, and they're saying in their heart, where should we return? It's like when you go to a fellow believer and you tell them, hey, I think your language is a little excessive. They're like, what are you talking about? Why? Because in their minds, they're adhering to the law of God perfectly. They're behaving like the perfect Christian. They never make a mistake. Every time someone comes to me and tells me I did something wrong, I feel like I got hit by a truck, blindsided, because I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm doing everything right. It never feels, you don't notice it. Like the scripture says, there's a beam in your eye, or there's a 4x4 in your eye, and you're looking at the speck in your brother's eye, right? It's the reverse. You don't see what's happening to you, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
You got a beam?
No. Yes. Hector and I were talking about this last week. When sometimes I think back to like my day, and I'll be like, oh, I didn't really. There wasn't really like any egregious sin that I did today, but then I'll take every thought captive, and I'll be like, wow, I was prideful in this way, I was prideful in that way, I was jealous in this way, and it's kind of like the children of Israel are like romanticizing their past, with their forefathers, and really there's lots of scripture that talks about how their forefathers were not faithful to God, and they're just like just completely forgetting that. Like I forget about through my day how disrespectful, like you said, I've been to God.
Yeah. Thank you. That's a good point. And that's what. So in their hearts, they're like, remember what does God require of a believer, right? What are some qualifications? Obedience, right? What else?
Humility.
What was it?
The fruit of the Spirit.
You bear fruit. Bear fruit.
Kindness.
Amen. Holiness, kindness. But what? I'm sorry. What was that?
Love for his bride.
Love for his bride, right? But above all, I think, or in that mix is a humility. It's a humbleness. So when He asks you, return unto me, what a true believer would say.
Amen.
God, how? Let me know what I need to do. What do I need to change? What am I doing wrong? Their question in their hearts is, what do you mean return? You're talking, God, you must have got it wrong. You must be talking about the guy behind me. You're not talking about me, right? That shows that they're not humble. God is belaboring to write this or to have this prophet say this to them with a hope that their heart changes, right? He's not just doing it to list it or something. God doesn't care about that. It's for them to hear the word and be converted, right? We always hear in the scripture that God's purpose is to convert. Not that He's fighting, that God can't do it, but the purpose of the Bible is so you would hear the truth and then be converted. So that question, that their response is this kind of, God, you got it wrong. You couldn't be talking about us in general or me personally. And I'm trying to say that's the wrong heart to have, right? Could someone read Isaiah 29, 13 to 14? I put 4. And like I said, they have this question in their mind saying, what do you mean return? And I'm going to say, God's going to explain to them how what He means by returning. Not that they're not doing the law, but how they're doing the law. How they're keeping the law. How they claim to be honoring Him. That's Isaiah 29, 13 to 14. Where's this now? It's not going to be read.
Then the Lord said, because the people draw near with their words and honor me with their lip service, but they remove their hearts far from me, and their reverence for me consists of tradition learned by rote. Therefore, behold, I will once again deal marvelously with this people, wondrously marvelous. And the wisdom of the wise men shall perish, and the discernment of their discerning men shall be concealed.
Thank you very much. And so that's what they're doing. Have you ever done that? Have you ever said, you know what, from now on, I'm going to read the Bible every morning, I'm going to pray 3 hours, and you don't do it. It's kind of a lip service. It's kind of like you say, or you do it. But it's like, okay, I got 10 more minutes in this prayer session, and your heart's not fully involved in this thing. They're doing this every day of their lives. They're keeping every law to the best of their ability. They're like the rich young ruler saying, I've kept all the laws. But God doesn't want just the observance. He doesn't just want you to show up at church every week. He doesn't just want you to read the Bible real quick so you can say you did a chapter that day. He wants your heart. He wants the heart to be involved. And that's the heart. That's the Bible. People always say that being a Christian is easy, or some people say that it's easy, it's wonderful, God's going to bless you. But it takes all of you. It's the impossible thing to give your heart fully over to God. And that's what he requires. And so when he asks, where shall you return? The question should be, God, I know I'm failing. Help me to proceed. But that's not what they say. Yes?
Well, with the heart, that's why the person has to be regenerated.
Amen. Yeah.
And the verse basically is, but God be thanks that you were the servants of sin, but you have obeyed from the heart
Amen.
that form of doctrine that was delivered to you.
Mm-hmm.
That is showing that basically it's not only the will that has to be converted, but it's the mind and the heart. The verse is showing that you obeyed that form of doctrine that was delivered to you from the heart, and you cannot do this stuff unless there's regeneration, there's the new birth, unless you're in Christ. By the way, the pastor said that was 168 times, by the way, in the sermon, not 147. And this is what's got to take place with the heart, with the new heart, and that is a tremendous verse in Romans 6:17 that applied to what you were just saying. Right
Amen.
now.
Thank you. And to kind of back up what Bob is saying is, they didn't have this understanding that that's what God required. That the reason why they were not able to keep the law, the reason why they weren't able to please God was that they needed a change outside of themselves. They were dead men trying to keep a living law, and that's the problem. We know it in retrospect, but they didn't understand it, and God's belaboring it. And so I believe anyone who responded differently to that question and said, God, show me, what do I need to do? Okay, there's a Messiah coming. I believe that the Messiah is going to come, is going to change everything. He's going to have this change of heart. Yes, Ray.
Those who set up the Bible, something more than that. Those who want to read the Bible or believe in the Bible, and you try to tell them something about Christ. And if some say they believe in the Bible, right, and you ask them a question from the Bible, and that person, they say, I don't know, right, because he never read the Bible. You understand me? You say you read the Bible, but you never read it.
Right, so there's some people who haven't read it, yeah.
You can't answer the question.
Right,
You see?
understood.
So a lot of people don't even read the Bible. So when you ask them certain things in the Bible, when you read a chapter from the Bible, they say they never heard it.
Right.
You see?
Yeah, and unless they're a new believer, that's really not a good thing.
Right.
Yeah. Thank you, Ray. And so I guess a verse that kind of wrap it into a bow is when Jesus, when he goes to all the sinners and the prostitutes and the tax collectors and the Pharisees have this histrionics, they are very upset at him. He says, well, I've come for the sick, right? The healthy don't need someone to heal. And this is kind of the idea. They don't think they're sick. They don't think they're sick. And so they don't understand God's question because they're not sick. They have their forefathers to lay on. They have Abraham to fall onto. They have the law, that they have the fact that they're better than the heathens and the pagans and the people around them to fall back on. And God says that's not enough. All right? Now we'll jump on to verse 8 through 10, which is probably going to be the part that I think we have the most misunderstanding about, right? And I wish Rob was here. Okay. All right. Will a man rob God? Yet you have robbed me. But you say, wherein have we robbed thee? In tithes and offerings. So real quick, because we're not going to spend a lot of time on it, because tithes are a 10th part. It's basically a 10th part. That's all it means, right? Offerings are whatever you give unto God. So they had different kind of offerings in the Bible for different things. For example, when they were building the temple, when David was gathering to build the temple, the people offered gold. They offered spices. They offered all these things to help to build the temple. So it's something that you give from your heart freely. So there's no limit on that. The tithes part was supposed to be at 10%. Like we discussed last time, how were the Levitical priests supposed to eat? If anyone remembers. Huh? Why was that required? Why? You can answer the next question. Why were they required? Why couldn't they just go and get their own food or farm their own stuff?
They were offering intercession for the people.
Correct. They were separated from that task. They were told by God, "You are mine. You are the consequence of me killing the firstborn of the people of Egypt." And so you will not work. The only work that you will do is to work on my behalf, which is collecting the tithes, which is ministering in the temple, ministering in all the things of God, and being an intercessor for God. That was their job. Now, the priests, even their homes were not their own. They couldn't own property. They had a land set aside for them, right? So the tithes were given to the Levitical priests for their food, for housing, for them to sustain themselves and to live, because they weren't able to work in any other capacity. They had no option to not work, to make money in any other way or to eat in any other way. All right? So those tithes and those offerings were given to them for that purpose. All right? So now, it was not money for the most part. It was food. Money was only given in the case of you're very far away from the temple. You weren't able to get there. You wouldn't be able to transport the food and have it preserved until you get there. So they would get money that would be the equivalent of that food and then bring it to the priest so the priest could have it. Right? So tithes, I know today we talk about money, and it's not that. It was about food, produce to feed the physically give the food to the priest. Also, part of it was for the offering, right? So they would give food. Part of it was to be offered, and part of it was to be kept by the priests. All right? So I want to make sure you guys understand that. It's very important. Now, the beginning question of this is, will a man rob God? So I'm asking you, well, can we rob God? Is it possible to rob God? You know?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, you're all right. Yes and no. It's a trick question. Yes and no. Good.
Well, don't you have to go to the 10 Commandments? Thou shalt not steal. Thou shalt not commit adultery. Thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt not commit adultery. Thou shalt not steal.
Right.
So you're breaking that commandment.
Correct.
Don't do that.
Good. Thank you. Can someone read Psalms? Well, I'll read it. Psalms 50, 10 through 13. Right? And I guess a lot of people are familiar with this. Right? For every beast of the forest is mine, and the cattle upon 1,000 hills. I know all the fowls of the mountain, and the wild beasts of the field are mine. If I were hungry, I would not tell thee, for the world is mine, and the fullness thereof. Will I eat the flesh of bulls or drink the blood of goats? So there's a lot of stuff I got to unpack in here. But primarily he's saying, when he says the cattle on 1,000 hills, he means he owns everything. Right? He means the whole world is mine. Everything is mine. So can a man rob God in a physical sense? No, he can't rob God. Everything is his. Everything we have is a caretaker. We're given as a caretaker, and we're just kind of taking care of it for God. It's not ours. So no, they can't rob him in a physical sense. But yes, we can rob God, like Bob was alluding to, in the sense that we're not keeping his law, right? So in this passage, God is explaining that everything is his. And another part of this is, well, why am I requiring you to give these tithes and offering, right? We also talk about today when we give our offering to the church. It's not so that because God is lacking money, right? But it is used to further God's kingdom. Now, in this case, he's saying, once again, he's asking a question. He said, if I were hungry, he knows in their hearts they're complaining about the food. Well, why are we giving you all the stuff? Remember, at that time, food was everything. So you're working, you're a farmer, and you're farming, and 10% of everything you make, you have to then chuck it over and give it to the priest. And in this particular case, God is talking about how the priests are misusing it and abusing it. So in that person's heart, it's going to be like, why are we doing this? God doesn't need this, right? That's the question. He's saying, you're asking, will a man rob God? You're saying, I can't rob you. So if I give you less than what you need, fine. If I don't give you anything, it should be fine. If I give you just some of it, it should be fine. If I give you the lame or the sick or the spotted, and I don't give you the perfect lamb that you want, it should be fine. God doesn't need it. That's what that question is referring to. Not is it physically possible to rob God? That's not what they're asking. They're saying, God, why does it matter? Why do I have to give this tithe or this offering? Why do I have to give money when we offer the plate around? Why? God doesn't need it.
Yeah, giving offering to God, it comes from your heart,
Right.
right?
Right. Exactly. Exactly. Thank you, Ray. Thank you, Ray. So that question is, will a man rob God? And the answer is no. And the answer is yes. And I think the rest of it is going to explain what God thinks, how they. So the question is, how are they robbing God? If they can't rob him through not giving him his own stuff back, how are they robbing him? They're robbing him in the sense that, let's see if I should say it or, well, one way they're robbing him is in Malachi chapter 2, 7 through 8. Can someone read that? Because he describes through the beginning of Malachi how they're robbing him.
For the lips of a priest shall preserve knowledge, and men shall seek instruction from his mouth. For he is the messenger of the Lord of hosts. But as for you, you have turned aside from the way. You have caused many to stumble by the instruction. You have corrupted the covenant of the Levites, says the Lord of hosts.
Right. So how are they doing it? They're offering polluted offerings. So you can rob God by the people give you some meat. Some is good, some is not so good. You take the really good stuff for yourself and for your family, and you give God the polluted thing. God, that you're robbing God in that instance. You're saying, my glory is greater than God's glory. You're taking his glory away, right? You're also saying, you're answering that question in the negative again, saying, God doesn't need it. What am I giving it to him for? I need it. My family needs it. I want that T-bone steak. I want the sirloin steak. God can take the fat, the bad parts. What's the point of me putting the good part on there, which is just going to waste and get burned up in the fire, when I can take the good part and give God the bad part? God doesn't care about that. He has the cattle on 1,000 hills. They were misusing it, the scripture. They were looking at it in the wrong way. They're looking at it in a selfish human way. And we're going to talk about later about what's the right way to look at it.
They were giving the sickly sheep that were crippled instead of and throwing that into God. God didn't like it, rather than the perfect, unblemished sheep.
Correct,
That was
because
a picture of the Lord Jesus Christ.
Because their heart aren't converted, and so they don't think about how God is giving them everything, the very air they breathe, and this joy that God is saving them from hell, or from the wrath, for his own wrath. They're thinking about it in terms of, we worked hard for this. We grew this. We made this. You know, why should we give this to you, God? Or why should we give you the best thing? Why can't we just give you the scraps? Because you don't need it. And I think we, as believers, do that too. Why should we give up our early mornings, get up early and pray? Why should we spend time? We could be enjoying ourselves, going to the beach and relaxing, reading the Bible. I read it 1,000 times. Nothing's changed. You know, why am I reading? Why do I gotta do Bible studies? Why do I have to punch my card in and be honest at work when everyone else is fudging the numbers? Right? We have this attitude of we're too good to do what God requires of us, and we're actually being penalized for doing what God requires. The other nations aren't doing this. No one else is taking 10% of their produce and 10% of their hard-earned work and giving it to the temple. Yeah, even if we believe in God, God doesn't need it. Is the way that their heart is going to it. Now, it's talking. Now, I don't want to lose track of this now. So another question is, who brings the tithes to the storehouse? Right? It says, "You have robbed me." It's talking about you have robbed me. Wherein have we robbed thee? It says tithes and offering. It says that you are cursed with a curse, for you have robbed me, this whole nation. Who is he talking about? Is he talking about Israel as a whole, or is he talking about the Levitical priests? Israel as a whole? Yeah, that's right.
If you're robbing God, it's coming from your own.
Exactly.
And only God can know that.
Exactly. Right. And God is the one speaking to them, so he knows.
But God is the one who prepares everything for everyone. God gives us everything.
Thank you, Ray.
So we could survive. You understand me?
Yeah.
So why should we not keeping his word?
That's what God's argument is. Thank you, Ray. Thank you, Ray. Any other thoughts besides Israel?
Well, I think
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah.
There's a verse in the Bible that says,
Your house is filled with goods while the temple remains.
Yes. Amen. Amen. Thank you. That's a good verse.
Yeah.
Ben first, sir.
I would say that it's potentially like the Levitical priests, because that's who the letter is to, and he's been addressing them the whole
Amen.
time.
Amen. That's kind of where I'm leaning. Yes.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of in Haggai when the house of Israel was where they were building their own houses before they built the temple.
Yeah.
And God said basically you're gonna sow much but reap very little.
Amen.
And
It's a good one.
I mean they were just robbing God of affection and,
Exactly.
and of trust.
Amen.
And they're not placing their trust in His promises.
Amen. Good point. Good point.
Also, like you had said before, like, and I forgot the text, but it starts from the top and it goes from the bottom. So,
Amen.
like,
Amen. Yeah.
the Levitical priests are like robbing God and just kind of trickling down from there.
Exactly. Exactly. See, you've been paying attention. Right. So the question is, who brings the tithes to the storehouse? So we bring the rest of Israel brings the tithes, right? Remember, God's not accusing them at any point in Malachi of not bringing anything. He's not even accusing them of not bringing the 10th or anything like that. He didn't say that anywhere else. He's not accusing them of not bringing anything. He's not accusing them of not keeping up the law's appearance. He's just saying, you're giving me the worst. You're not giving me the best. He said, would a governor accept this from your hand? If it was a human governor, would he accept the lame and the blind? No, he would want the best things. He would want the right things. So at this point, even like a couple verses before, it says, and now you priests, right? The previous verses are talking about how he's going to basically destroy the Levitical priests. And I was saying, or judge them, and I was saying that means it's going to end it, right? He's still talking about them. Now, the people of Israel have something to do with it. That's a good point, Rose. They do have something to do with it. They individually maybe not be giving the right amount. That's true. That's implied here. But the idea is, who brings it to the storehouse? They've come and they say, this is my tithes for the year. Once again, Ray made a good point. God knows their hearts, whether they're bringing the right amount or not the right amount. But once they give it to him, the priests are the ones who decide which one goes onto the altar and which one they keep. And that's where there's a disconnect, I think, because he's saying, he later on talks about, I'm sorry, I shouldn't ask a question without reading that part. Bring you all the tithes into my storehouse, so that it's being in my house. Well, the regular people don't do that. They don't put anything in God's storehouse. Yes, sir.
Isn't it possible though that because the whole nation is bringing the tithes to the priests, so yeah, they can shortchange the amount, that kind of thing. But
Correct,
they could
yes.
also give. They could say, "Oh, we're gonna keep the T-bones for ourselves and give the fatty part to the Lord."
I agree, yeah.
So they could do that just as well, even though
Yes.
they're not bringing it to the storehouse.
Yes.
They could give the priest a bad selection. So to speak.
And I think both are happening. But to continue with what Thing is saying, he's been addressing them.
Right.
And everything is progressively going against them more and more. So I think it's a bad thing to say, no, it can't be that at all. And that's why I agree with Rose. It can't, it's not all the time, but who the primary focus is, right? Some of the versions are a little sketchy on it, but it's basically saying that you're robbing me and you're robbing the whole nation. It's kind of the way I got it. And I don't do that often, but I looked at different versions, and it's not as clear. Yes, Ray.
How would they know that how many times?
God is talking to them. God is the one who's
God will know.
right, and he's the one condemning them. God is the one condemning them. They don't know. They're not aware. Yeah.
Between yourself.
Yes.
God know how many times they bring.
Yeah. Oh, another reason why, like I said, it's open to a little bit of debate, but everything up to this point and everything after this point is kind of focused on the priests. Another verse to think about in the New Testament is when I forget exactly where it is. I should have wrote it down. Where the woman comes and she gives her last, and the other guy gives much, right? And God honors that last. So I don't think God is there thinking, and maybe this is a little bit of my own personality, I don't think God is there really, really mad that some people are holding back a little bit or not giving enough. Or I think that really, even though he asked for the 10th, is a heart issue. I think it's more on the priests, what they do with what is given. And they're not even putting it in the storehouse of God, regardless of the quality, is I think what the verse is saying. And I think the way that it's presented today in most churches is the people didn't give it. You guys have to give 10%. Then we'll be blessed. rather than saying, once whatever we give the pastor, what does he do with that? I think that the Bible also talks about the condemnation is greater on the leaders than on the people. And I think this is where the focus is. If you disagree, I definitely understand. There is a little leeway in the way it's written, and it's a little leeway in the Hebrew as well. I'm ready. I'm just going to continue for a little bit, unless it's directly related. Yes,
The
Bob.
important thing in the widow's mite is that the great Lord Jesus said he has never found greater faith. There's
Amen.
only 3 times in the Bible that's ever been found.
That's true.
One to the centurion, and the other time to the Syrophoenician woman.
Amen.
That basically is the door.
All non-Jews.
Basically, Romans 12:1. That's
Right.
the verse I'm coming with.
Exactly. Good points. Yeah, thank you. But and also the ultimate point is, it's not the amount that really matters, but the heart. Ray's been saying for a while. Now I had some other verses, but I'm not going to go too deep in it because we talked about it last week. Hebrews 7:10, which is talking about how now this is supposed to answer the question that I asked. Well, what did they rob God off? And some of you said it. God's heart. What are some spiritual things that they're robbing God off, despite the food and stuff like that? What's God asking from us giving an offering on Sunday, or what is he asking these Jewish people when he says give a tenth?
Sincerity.
Sincerity, good. Heart sincerity. Any other
He
thoughts?
wants our best. Somebody said it before.
Amen. I want our
He wants
best.
from the top.
Amen.
He sends his best, and he wants us to love him with his whole
Amen.
heart, soul, and mind. That's a commitment. When you do that, basically, instead of throwing in 16 cents, you could throw in 50 cents.
Exactly, amen. Those are all perfect. One other thought I was thinking about, and what I wanted to focus on is faith. He wants your faith. This idea that, yeah, you're putting it on the fire, and it seems like it's a waste, and it feels like it's hopeless, and it feels like, well, I really could use that meat that I just gave away, or that plant, or that money. But he wants your faith in him.
To exercise it.
Exactly, to exercise that faith. So all those points are 100% correct. I'm going to focus a little bit on the faith because I think it makes more sense in this text. But I think everyone's answer was correct. In Hebrews 7:10, the first time we ever see about tithing or tenth is when, and I'll read it real quick. For this Melchizedek, Hebrews 7 is talking about what happened in Genesis. For this Melchizedek, king of Salem, priest of the Most High God, who met Abraham, returning from the slaughter of the kings, and blessed him, to whom also brought and gave a tenth part of all. First being interpretation of king of righteousness, and after that the king of Salem, which is the king of peace. So he just won this big battle. He knew God was the one who was with him because he's fighting all these different countries, and he won the battle. He sees this priest of the Most High God, and he says, oh, hey, the best I can do, a tenth of whatever I have, I'm going to give it to this guy. Right? What does that say? Is he talking about his goods? Yeah, it's material things that he's given to this guy, but it's his faith, it's his acknowledgement that the victory he just had was from God. That's what that was. It was an act of faith that, hey, I couldn't have done any of these things without you, God. Take 10 of it. Because off myself, I wouldn't have got any of it. So I'm going to give you 10. It's a faith process. And that's why I'm going to go back to what we're talking about here. It's very difficult if you're thinking about it as just money or food or something we give. If it's faith, then these questions are different. You got to read it differently. If it's about stuff, then, yeah, will a man rob God? The question, yeah, no, we can't rob God. But if it's from faith, if it's this act of acknowledging that God is providing you everything, then yes, you have robbed me. And to the priest, you have robbed me and this whole nation, because everything that they've given you as an act of faith, you are then abandoning by not giving it to me. You're making their faith void in what you're doing.
So
right?
by faith, Abel offered up a more perfect sacrifice than Cain, right?
Amen.
By faith,
Exactly.
it says in the faith chapter,
Amen.
Hebrews chapter 11.
Amen. Thank you very much. Genesis 14, 21, 22, which is what it's talking about. We're going to jump back over there a little bit. And it says, Genesis 14, 21 to 22. And if I'm going too fast, guys, stop me. It's just a lot of stuff, and I want to get it out. But if there's anything that you're not getting, just stop me. It's worth it to explain it. And the king of Sodom said, this is after he won, after he gave the tithe on to Melchizedek. And that's another thing, he dealt with the king of Salem, who was not a part of the battle, wasn't involved in the war, and just came at the end. He gave him first and then dealt with the other people. Why? Because he felt God was supposed to be first, honored first. And that the only representative that was there was the Melchizedek. He says, and the king of Sodom said unto Abraham, give me the persons and take the goods to thyself. And Abraham said to the king of Sodom, I have lifted up my hand unto the Lord. Okay. The Most High God, the possessor of the heaven and earth. I didn't write the rest of it. This is bad. Okay. But it continues talking about how he's basically saying, no. He's going to say in the rest of the verses, no, I'm just going to take enough to kind of feed my guys. I don't want anything from you. Why? Because I've lifted up my hand to the Most High God, right? He's saying, if it's about possessions, is my point in this. I should have given you more parts of that verse. If it's about possessions, Abraham would have said, all right, good, I'm going to take this, I'm going to take this, I'm going to take all this stuff, this is my stuff. I fought, I won this battle, it's mine. It's not about that. It's about the faith. So he basically told that earthly king, you know what, take everything. Just leave just enough to kind of cover my expenses. Take everything. He didn't want anything. He gave what he got away, and the extra that the king was going to give him out of gratitude, he said, I don't even want. Because it's not about the possessions. It's not about the stuff. It's about the faith that you show in God. All right? And I believe that that's what they're robbing him primarily. They're robbing him because giving polluted things is a lack of faith. Not giving him enough is a lack of faith. What you do with the things that are given shows that you're saying, how have we robbed you? Whoa. If I came to you and said, you're robbing God, and I went through the whole process, once again, the humility factor is going to be like, yeah, I could really serve more. I could really, I am robbing God in my time, in my time. Good. Sorry, you're right in front of me.
Just thinking the way that it ties in with that parable, I don't know if it's a parable or an actual story of the woman, who only had gave her last 2 pennies.
Actually,
it's like if all you had, if you were an Israelite in 1500 BC, if all you had was diseased cattle, and that's what you gave to the Lord, but you gave from your heart out of faith, he would accept that.
Amen.
Whereas the man next to you who had like an immaculate herd of cattle, if he gave you something even with one spot on it, because he wanted to give the least of what he had, that would not be from faith.
Exactly. Thank you very much. So another point, it's talking about, it says, prove me now, and in some verses say, test me now. But I really think I don't like the word test, even though it is translatable, is correct. I think he's saying, see if God's word is true. Investigate me. Instead of, keeping a little bit back, give me what I require of you and see what I'm going to do. Right? So he said, prove me now. Why? Because they're not proving him. They're not acting in faith. They're not behaving properly. So I'm going to give you 2 Chronicles 31, and I'm going to read it because it's a lot. And I'm going to show you how it's a faith thing. It's a trusting in God thing more than it's a money thing. And I think because today a lot of preachers make it into a money thing, or faith being to get more possessions. And that's not the transaction. All right, 1 second. 2 Chronicles 31, verse 4, starting at. And I'm going to skip around a little bit. All right? Moreover, he commanded the people that dwell. Okay, I'm sorry. So I got to actually explain who we are. So this is about Hezekiah, and he's kind of bringing a revival back to the people of Israel, because they've been falling away all this time. He's bringing a revival back, and now he's asking. It's going to start off now by him telling him to basically do what God has been commanding them to do, which is to give freely of their hearts, right? And we're going to see what happens when people actually give freely from their hearts, when they're not doing it out of compulsion or out of fear, but out of a real reverence for God. He says, and Hezekiah says, moreover, he commanded the people that dwelt in Jerusalem to give the portion of the priests and the Levites. I mean, they gave stuff. But he's saying, give the priests and the Levites their portion, right? Give them their portion. They weren't doing that, is what I'm saying, right? That they might be encouraged in the law of the Lord. Why? Because the priests depend on everything you give them. That's how they survive. And as soon as the commandment came abroad, the children of Israel brought in abundance the first fruits of corn, wine, and oil, and honey, and all of the increase of the field, and the tithe of all things brought they in abundantly, right? Food, products, things for the priest to eat, not necessarily money. Verse 6, and concerning the children of Israel and Judah that dwelt in the cities of Judah, they also brought in the tithe of oxen and sheep and the tithe of holy things that were consecrated unto the Lord their God, and they laid them in heaps. Right? It was so much. It was piling on top of each other because they were given bountifully from their heart. Right? It's not about the possessions. Once again, God doesn't need any of this stuff. Right? The priests physically do, but the God doesn't need it. And they're giving it because they love God. Verse 7. In the 3rd month, they began to lay the foundation of the heaps and finished them in the 7th month. So, 3rd to 7th, right? That's months. Just constant giving from their heart, from the abundance of their heart, right? And it wasn't from compulsion. Verse 8. And when Hezekiah and the princes came and saw the heaps, they blessed the Lord and his people Israel. Then Hezekiah questioned with the priests and the Levites concerning the heaps. So they had so much, they were like, well, what do we do with all this stuff, right? Verse 10, and Azariah, the chief priest of the house of Zadok, answered him and said, since the people began to bring the offerings into the house of the Lord, we have had enough to eat. And have left plenty. For the Lord hath blessed his people, and that which is left is this great store. What? God gave them faith from the heart. They had more than they could possibly have. I think that's what God is talking about when he's talking about open up the windows of heaven. We'll get into that. Verse 11, and then Hezekiah commanded to prepare chambers in the house of the Lord, that they prepare them. Bring the meat into my storehouse. That's where that's coming from. If you do it right, you're never going to lack, is what he's saying to the priests. And when you have that much, we're going to have an abundance that we're going to keep. That's what he's saying in these verses. Skip to 20. And thus did Hezekiah throughout all Judah, and wrought that which was good and right and truth before the Lord his God. And in every work that he began in the service of the house of God, and in the law, and in the commandments, to seek his God, he did with all his heart and prospered. And so this is revival sped on this giving from their hearts, and it was a bountiful amount, which actually before this, there was a bountiful giving of everyone. And then after that, he commanded them, hey, let's give to the priests too. And from that, months upon months, they had so much, the priest said they had enough to eat. See what I'm saying? So it's an act of faith. And God is honoring the act of faith by making it even multiply even more. Right? It's not about the giving. They gave more than anyone in any time has ever given to God. And there was so much, there was an abundance. Everyone was full. No one was hungry. God is saying, test me, or prove me, or show me. But in their minds, they were saying, if I give him, I'm short-shifting myself. Giving God my time means I can't watch Netflix, or go to the movies, or hang out with my girl, or do whatever. We always do it in calculations. Well, if I do that for 3 hours, I'm not going to have time for my job. Or I'm going to be late for work. We do it in these kind of zero-sum games. And God is saying, if you honor me with your time and your money and your food and all these different things that I'm demanding of you, then I'm going to provide for your necessities in an abundant way. You're never going to lack. You may not be a multimillionaire, but you're never going to lack in all these things. I'm asking you to give me everything, and I'm going to then return back to you what's necessary for you. Does everyone understand that? Right? And so it's a faith transaction more than a if you give me. You guys have heard this. You guys know the prosperity gospel. What do they say? What are some of the things they say about giving $1,000? What are you supposed to get back by giving 1,000?
10,000.
10,000, right? I've heard pastors say, borrow the money and give it, and then you'll be. It's crazy, right? That's not what God is talking about. That's not what He's talking about. Right, the seed of faith. The seed of faith is going to produce more faith. It's not going to produce money or a car or a Lamborghini. It's going to produce more faith. If you have faith, your faith is. He said that Jesus talked about the faith of a mustard seed, right? That is going to bloom and grow. Not that you're going to be Bill Gates, right? That's what. It's a twist. So they also talk about faith, but it's that if you give me money, God's going to give you more money. He's saying, if you give me that $10, don't be worried about that $10 you're giving me, because I'm going to provide for your necessities. You're not going to be starving one day because you gave me the $10.
Don't give me the 10 with the sole purpose being that you want to get the 100 back.
I've never done that. Hey, Bob.
To make the application on what you were saying in the New Testament with the farmer that had the barn. And he had so much crops in that barn.
Yes,
He built
yes.
another barn.
Yes.
And the great Lord Jesus said tonight, your soul is required. And going into Luke 20 with the coin, give unto Caesar, render unto Caesar, the Lord Jesus said. And on the taxes, when we're thinking about that, on March 15th, and give unto the Lord, which is the Lord's.
I'm paying mine on April 15th.
April 14th. I'm gonna give myself a little cushion. And I'm running out of time. I didn't realize. I felt like I had plenty of time. All right, so let me kind of finish this off real quick. 2 Kings chapter 7, verse 19 through 20. I'm saying, so a little background on this. So Elisha, not Elijah, that's Elijah was first, then he gave his double spirit unto Elisha. And so the Samaritans, or the people of Israel, who were taken away, and they were kind of very paganish. There was a king who was being besieged by the Syrians. So they're when they do a siege, I mean, they're trapped inside the castle. You can't get any food. Everything's cut off. And basically, what you do in that kind of situation is you keep the guards out, you keep the army outside, and cut off their food. And eventually, they give up because they lack food. So he then calls for Elisha, and he's cursing Elisha because he'd be like, it's Elisha's fault why they're in this predicament. Because Elisha's constantly telling them to fight against the Syrians and whatever the situation is. At this point, so he sends someone to Elisha. He already says in his heart that he wants Elisha to be killed. The king of Samaria sends someone to go talk to Elisha. Elisha tells him this prophecy of that he's going to open up the windows of heaven. And the guy mocks him. And it's a long story. You guys should read 2 Kings chapter 7. It's very interesting. But ultimately, it does happen. God does something that scares all the Syrians away. They leave all their possessions there. I mean, at that point, they're starving. They leave all their possessions there. The people of Israel go outside, and then they spoil all the goods. They left all their iPhones and their Samsungs and all that stuff. They left it there. So the prophecy is fulfilled, right? So I'm going to read it. It says, "And that the Lord answered the man of God and said, now behold, if the Lord should make windows in heaven," because there's a phrase about windows of heaven, right? "What might such thing be?" And he said, "Behold, thou shalt see it with thine eyes." The person was mocking him because he made this prophecy. "But thou shalt not eat thereof." And so it fell out onto him, for the people trod him in the gate, and he died. So when this happened, he's standing in the middle of the gate, and all the people knock him down to go get the stuff. But he was mocking, because my point in this is, God can do miracles in that way. When we give that $10 or $50 or whatever percentage you want to give, or whatever we have in our hearts, because I've had that moment where I'm like, I don't really have that much this week. Should I give him put the 20 in the plate? And I'm struggling with it. God is saying, no. Test me in this way. If you're going to lack throughout the week when that $10 is gone. In this particular case, the man of God is telling them God is going to provide for you. And they're like, wow, there's an army in front of us. They're cutting off all our resources, and we're starving. There was a story before this where the reason why the king wants to kill Elisha is they're so poor that two women have this argument. One woman says, "Hey, I'll eat your child tonight because we're so hungry, and tomorrow you'll eat my child." The next day, after they eat the first child, the other woman said, "Nah, I'm not going to do it." And so Elijah is horrified, like we're horrified. No, not Elisha. The king is horrified. And that's why he's like, it's Elisha's fault. Let's go kill Elisha. And Elisha's saying, no, don't worry about it. God's going to open up the windows in heaven for you, and you're not going to be starving by tomorrow. And no one believes, and they don't, and not that the people don't believe him, but the man mocks him. The one that mocks, God kills. My point is, God can do it. Don't worry about it. Give what you, I'm not saying give everything you have, but it's an act of faith to give. It's not a transaction where you're going to get some miracle stuff, but God's going to provide for your needs. The reason why you're not giving is going to be satisfied. You and then Rose?
Oh, random question. When you said the guy he killed, that's the one who got strikes down?
No, he gets trampled by the people running to get the stuff. Right. Yes, sir. One second, Ray.
Sounds like Black Friday.
Exactly. Original Black Friday.
Tie into this point and your previous point from 2 Chronicles. I I look at what I spend my money on, and that like reveals to me what I value and what I care most about, and it usually convicts me. it convicts me because I'm willing to give money to get something that I desire, the desire of the eyes, but it would hurt me more to give that same amount on top of my
Even half,
my giving.
half
Right,
that amount.
right. So I forget what I was going to say.
No, but I kind of get the joy.
It reveals your heart. Yeah.
It reveals your heart. It reveals how much you really trust God. They use it. What I'm saying to you is this faith has been manipulated today, where it's you don't have faith that God's going to give you a mansion. Really believe. Give as much money as you possibly can so that God can bless you in a proportional way. No, it's basically dealing with that question in your heart of, if I give this $50, then I'm going to be starving by Thursday. God is saying, no. If you feel the need to give that $50, give it freely. I'm going to provide for your needs. Not in the sense where you're going to get a proportional amount of money increased, which is the way I think they're abusing it. But it's just, do you have enough faith in God? Do you trust in God enough that the very breath that we have is from him? If you do, then I'm not telling you to give a specific amount, but when you give it freely. Don't even worry about the aspect of it. Now, I'm not saying to give, like the woman, to give your entire paycheck. I'm not telling you to do that. But don't scoff at it. Like, I've had situations where I've had I'm struggling week, and I don't want to give anything. And I'm sure you're going to have, I'm not trying to punish anyone for that. But I'm saying, if you have that 10, and you're like, I don't know, God is saying, see what I can do for you. Yes, Bob, and then we're going to end.
To me, it cost God everything.
Amen. Yes.
He sent his best. It cost Jesus Christ his life. And what I look at is this verse got to be read. I beseech you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, that you present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy, acceptable unto God, which is your reasonable service.
Amen.
Thanks be to God for his indescribable gift.
Amen.
Wow, Corinthians 15, very good.
I don't have time to get to 11 and 12, but it's kind of the same thing. He's going to provide for you. He's basically saying whatever you give, he's going to make it up. Have faith. Yes.
We can discuss this later, but I think about this a lot. What about like our brothers and sisters in the Sudan that have no money, that it's a war-torn country? They would give if they had, and yet they're starving to death. Like, how do we think of these persons?
Yeah.
I'm not trying to throw
No. That's a good point. That's a good point. Yeah.
Like, I think about that because they're just as justified in Christ as we are.
Amen.
They're
Amen.
no different.
And I think a quick way to answer it, and probably next week we'll go into it, is it's not a transaction, is what I'm saying. It's their faith is going to be rewarded. It may not be in this life, but their faith is going to be rewarded. But we get into a little, and I kind of messed up with that too, because I'm giving verses that are showing a transaction happening, but it's not a transaction. You might have a bad week that week, and you give that money, and you might still struggle. I'm not promising you that you're definitely going to be 100%, but he's saying in the long run, over time, prove me that's gonna. So I don't want you to think of it as a physical transaction of money. Yeah.
And I think really the way to think of it is because he's given us every spiritual blessing in heavenly places.
Yes.
We willingly and thankfully give him our lives and our stuff.
Correct.
However he wants to use it.
Right.
And so as he's blessed us with blessings that are eternal, we bless him back, so to speak, with our material, physical, mental, whatever stuff we have.
With no requirement that he provide us anything.
No,
That's the part that I think.
We're delighted
Amen.
to give to him because he's given to us far more than we could ever give to him.
Amen. Not a transaction. Not a they can't give or they're not giving and God's not providing, because that's when we get all messed up. That's when people's faiths are all out of kilter because they're expecting something back. You had something to say? Yeah.
I think all of this, like, the act of faith that we take, it should be rooted with the motive that it is going to glorify God.
Amen.
And it's
That's
to
another
glorify
thing, yes.
God. And that's the chief end of man. That's the whole purpose behind everything that we do, is to bring glory to God.
Amen. Exactly. And all these other points that I won't be able to get to because of time. But if it's not glorifying God, if it's not from a good heart, If it's a transactional thing, you're going to be disappointed. But if it's from what Pastor Peter's saying, out of this gift that he's giving you, and you're just returning it back, you are robbing him in the sense that you are denying that he is worthy. All right, so we'll end it there. Ray, real quick.
You're talking about faith. Faith comes from God. If you don't believe,
Amen. Yes.
that faith is not in you. You must have to get a faith to believe in you. And
You choose.
faith comes through hearing. The other question is,
Can we discuss it after?
The other question is giving. You're talking about tithing and things. When God sees that all those who are given the tithe, whether it's Sunday or whatsoever, right? The tithe is not a blessing.
Can I answer that after we pray, Ray? I'll come talk to you.
Pray and
After.
sing a song.
Yeah. Pray and sing a song. After that, I'll answer. Hector, can you pray?